new, never-before-seen photos and video connected to the investigation into the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur.
New surveillance footage from 2Pac's final night has resurfaced, and it changes everything. The grainy images reveal movements, meetings, and moments that were never meant to be seen, reopening old wounds and darker theories. What really happened in those final hours, and who was watching, waiting, and possibly pulling strings behind the scenes, while truths remain buried in plain sight. Let's find out. A night the world thought it knew. Las Vegas, September 7, 1996. The desert city glowed under neon lights that Saturday night. The MGM Grand Garden Arena was packed wall to wall with over 16,000 people. They came to watch Mike Tyson fight Bruce Seldon for the WBA Heavyweight Championship. The energy inside felt electric. People shouted, cameras flashed, money changed hands on bets placed just minutes before the opening bell. Outside, the Las Vegas Strip pulsed with its usual chaos. Tourists wandered between casinos. High rollers arrived in limousines. The air smelled like expensive cologne, cigarette smoke, and ambition. This was Vegas at its peak, loud, excessive, and impossible to ignore. Inside the arena, the fight ended quickly. Tyson knocked Seldon down in the first round. The crowd erupted. Some people cheered, others booed, feeling cheated by how fast it ended. But the night was young. The real action was just beginning. Among the celebrities in attendance was Tupac Shakur. At 25 years old, he stood at the absolute peak of his fame. His double album, All Eyes on Me, had gone 5 times platinum. His face appeared on magazine covers. His voice filled radio stations across America. He was more than a rapper. He was a cultural force, a symbol of West Coast hip-hop, a lightning rod for controversy. Tupac moved through the MGM Grand like he owned it. He wore a black vest over a white shirt, heavy jewelry catching the light. His entourage surrounded him, friends, bodyguards, Death Row Records associates. Suge Knight, the imposing CEO of Death Row, stayed close. Tupac's energy that night seemed high, almost restless. He smiled, he talked, he soaked in the atmosphere of victory and excess. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Tupac had enemies. The East Coast versus West Coast rivalry had escalated from competitive lyrics to genuine hatred. Biggie Smalls, Sean, Diddy Combs, Bad Boy Records, all represented the other side. The beef had grown personal. Insults turned into threats. Threats turned into violence. Still, on this particular night, Tupac seemed untouchable. He had survived previous attacks. He had beaten legal cases. He had turned prison time into platinum records. The world watched him, criticized him, celebrated him, feared him. He was controversial, yes, but he was also undeniably alive, vivid and loud and impossible to look away from. This night in Las Vegas has been retold countless times. Documentaries have dissected it. Books have analyzed it. Podcasts have debated it. Everyone thinks they know what happened. The story has become almost mythical, a tragic tale of a superstar cut down in his prime. But what if the story we've been told is incomplete? What if the surveillance footage reveals details that never made it into the official narrative? What if the cameras captured something everyone missed, or something certain people hoped would stay hidden? This is not the story you think you know. This is the story the footage tells when you look closely enough, when you slow down the frames, when you notice who appears and who vanishes, when you pay attention to what the cameras show, and what they suspiciously don't. The surveillance footage, what it shows. The MGM Grand Garden Arena had security cameras positioned throughout the building, standard practice for a major casino and entertainment venue. The footage from that night exists, grainy, black and white, captured from fixed angles high on walls and ceilings. The quality is poor by today's standards, but the images tell a story. After Tyson's quick victory, the crowd began filtering out. Tupac and his crew moved through the casino lobby. The footage shows them walking with purpose. Tupac appears animated, talking to people around him. Suge Knight towers over the group, his massive frame impossible to miss. Then something happens in the lobby near the elevator banks. The footage shows a confrontation. Tupac and several members of his entourage suddenly rush towards someone. The The person is later identified as Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Compton Crips gang. The altercation is brief but violent. Tupac and others punch and kick Anderson. He falls to the ground. Security eventually breaks it up. This moment has been analyzed endlessly. Anderson was allegedly involved in stealing a Death Row Records medallion from one of Tupac's associates at a mall months earlier. The attack in the MGM lobby was retaliation, clear, direct, captured on camera. But look closer at the footage. Notice who stays calm during the chaos. Notice who pulls Tupac away and who encourages the violence. Notice the casino security guards who respond slowly, almost hesitantly. Notice the other people in the lobby. Some scatter, some watch, some seem completely unsurprised. After the fight breaks up, the footage shows Tupac's group leaving through the main entrance. They walk outside into the warm Nevada night. They head toward the valet area where cars are being brought around. The exterior cameras pick them up intermittently. Tupac climbs into a black BMW 750 sedan. Suge Knight is driving. The car is a rental, registered under someone else's name. Tupac sits in the front passenger seat without a seatbelt. He seems relaxed despite the confrontation minutes earlier. The footage shows him laughing, leaning back, talking to Suge. Other vehicles in their convoy load up. The group plans to head to Club 662, a nightclub Suge Knight owned. A celebration, a victory lap. The cars pull away from the MGM Grand at approximately 8:45 p.m. Here's where the footage gets interesting and frustrating. Various traffic cameras and business security systems along the Las Vegas Strip captured bits and pieces of the convoy's movement. The black BMW appears in several frames, heading north on Las Vegas Boulevard. The footage is fragmented, short clips separated by gaps of minutes. At 11:15 p.m., the convoy stops at a red light at the intersection of East Flamingo Road and Colville Lane. The footage from a nearby business shows the BMW sitting idle. Tupac is visible in the passenger seat, window rolled down. The September night is still warm. He has his arm resting on the door. This is the last footage showing Tupac Shakur, alive and unharmed. What happens next comes from eyewitness accounts, not cameras. A white Cadillac pulls up alongside the BMW. Someone inside opens fire. Bullets rip through the passenger side. Tupac is hit multiple times, in the chest, pelvis, and hand. Suge Knight is grazed by a bullet fragment. The white Cadillac speeds away. The BMW, now damaged and carrying a critically wounded Tupac, drives to the hospital. But here's what the footage does show in the immediate aftermath. Other vehicles from the convoy scatter in different directions. Some flee the scene entirely. Some follow the BMW toward the hospital. Some disappear from camera view and are never tracked. Hospital security cameras later capture the arrival. People rush Tupac inside. Blood stains the ground. Chaos erupts in the emergency room. Suge Knight, despite being injured himself, stays close. Police arrive and begin asking questions. Over the next 6 days, Tupac fights for his life in the hospital. No cameras capture those private moments. But on September 13, 1996, at 4 p.m., Tupac Shakur is pronounced dead. The official cause is respiratory failure and cardiopulmonary arrest associated with multiple gunshot wounds. The surveillance footage from that night has been viewed thousands of times. Investigators have studied every frame. Yet despite all this recorded evidence, fundamental questions remain unanswered. Who was driving the white Cadillac? The footage never identifies the car clearly enough to trace it. Who ordered the hit, if anyone did? The cameras can't answer that. Who knew Tupac's route that night? The footage doesn't tell us, but perhaps more important than what the footage shows is what it doesn't. The footage, what it doesn't show. Surveillance systems in 1996 were far from perfect. Cameras had limited range. Recording quality was poor. Coverage had gaps. The MGM Grand, despite being a major casino, didn't have cameras everywhere. The Las Vegas Strip, despite being one of the most visited streets in America, had blind spots. Understanding what the footage doesn't show requires understanding what should have been there, but isn't. First, the interior of the MGM Grand. The casino floor is covered with cameras watching tables, slot machines, and cash cages. Gaming areas must be monitored for security and regulatory reasons. But the hallways leading to private areas, less coverage, the backstage corridors where VIPs move, minimal cameras, the service entrances and exits, often unwatched. The footage shows Tupac's group in the main lobby attacking Orlando Anderson. But where did Anderson come from? How did he get into that specific area at that specific time? The footage doesn't show his arrival or his movements before the confrontation. It picks him up only when the violence starts. After the attack, Anderson is escorted away by security. Where did he go next? The cameras lose him. Did he leave the building immediately? Did he make phone calls? Did he meet with anyone? We don't know. Shufa. The footage has a gap, a missing piece that might explain what happened later. Second, the exterior footage around the MGM Grand. The valet area should be heavily monitored. Expensive cars, valuable items, crowds of people, all reasons to have comprehensive camera coverage. Yet the footage showing Tupac leaving the building is incomplete. Certain angles are missing. Some cameras appear to have malfunctioned or weren't recording. The convoy of vehicles leaves the MGM Grand around 8:45 p.m. The footage shows them pulling away. But then what? The Las Vegas Strip in 1996 had traffic cameras at major intersections. Businesses had their own security systems. The footage should track the convoy's movement fairly continuously. Instead, we get glimpses, short clips separated by minutes of nothing. Why? Were the cameras not working? Were the recordings not saved? Or were they never collected as evidence? Each explanation raises more questions. Third, the intersection of East Flamingo Road and Colville Lane, where the shooting occurred. This is a busy corner in Las Vegas. Hotels, restaurants, and businesses surround it. At 11:15 p.m. on a Saturday night, the area would be crowded with tourists and locals. Surely multiple cameras captured the shooting. Surely traffic cameras recorded the white Cadillac. Surely nearby business security systems caught something useful. Yet the footage that entered the official investigation is almost non-existent. The white Cadillac appears in only one or two brief clips, too far away, too blurry, too fast to identify clearly. The actual shooting, not captured on any camera that investigators have acknowledged publicly. How is that possible? How does a major shooting involving one of the most famous people in America happen in the middle of Las Vegas without clear video evidence? Either the cameras weren't pointing the right direction, or the footage was lost, or it was never properly collected. Each possibility is troubling. Each suggests a failure, technical, procedural, or something worse. Fourth, the pursuit after the shooting. The white Cadillac flees the scene. Other vehicles and Tupac's convoy scatter. Where did everyone go? The footage doesn't show sustained tracking of any vehicle involved. The white Cadillac vanishes. No traffic cameras follow it. No business security footage picks it up blocks away. A car involved in a high-profile shooting disappears in one of the most surveilled cities in America. That fact alone should raise suspicions. Fifth, the people who were there. The footage shows crowds at the MGM Grand. It shows people in the lobby during the Anderson confrontation. It shows bystanders on the Strip. But who were they? Did investigators identify everyone visible on camera? Did they interview all potential witnesses? The footage contains faces that were never matched to names. People appear briefly, then vanish from the record. Maybe they were tourists who left town. Maybe they were locals who didn't want to get involved. Or maybe they were something else. People connected to what happened. People who knew more than they should. The absence of follow-up is telling. The gaps in identification suggest incomplete investigation or intentional oversight. Finally, consider the timeline. From the MGM Grand confrontation at approximately 8:40 p.m. to the shooting at 11:15 p.m., 2.5 hours pass. What happened during that time? The footage shows Tupac's convoy leaving the casino. It shows fragments of their drive north on the Strip, but whole sections of those 2.5 hours are missing. Where did the convoy go? Did they stop anywhere? Did they meet anyone? The official story says they were heading to Club 662, but the club is only a few miles from the MGM Grand. Why did it take over 2 hours to get there? The footage doesn't answer. Were there other stops, other meetings, other conversations that might explain what happened at that intersection? Without the footage, we're left guessing. And gaps in footage create space for theories. Some reasonable, some wild, all impossible to prove or disprove. What the footage doesn't show haunts this case as much as what it does. Old rivalries, new questions. To understand September the 7th, 1996, you must understand the years leading up to it. Hip-hop in the mid-90s was more than music. It was territory, money, pride, and power. And it was divided. East Coast versus West Coast. New York versus Los Angeles. Bad Boy Records versus Death Row Records. Biggie Smalls versus Tupac Shakur. Sean Diddy Combs versus Suge Knight. These weren't just artistic competitions. They were battles for dominance in an industry worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They were personal feuds fueled by ego, betrayal, and real-world violence. It started with competition. New York had birthed hip-hop. The East Coast represented the culture's roots, lyrical complexity, street credibility, raw authenticity. Artists like the notorious B.I.G., Nas, and Wu-Tang Clan carried that legacy forward. Then the West Coast exploded. N.W.A., Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac brought a different sound. Funk-influenced beats, aggressive delivery, unapologetic West Coast pride. Death Row Records became a powerhouse. Los Angeles challenged New York's dominance. At first, the rivalry was healthy. Artists pushed each other to be better. Fans debated which coast made superior music. The energy elevated the entire genre. But money changed everything. Hip-hop became big business. Record sales reached mainstream America. Movies, endorsements, fashion deals, the money poured in. With money came power. With power came corruption. And with corruption came violence. Death Row Records, led by Suge Knight, embodied West Coast aggression. Suge was a former football player turned music executive with alleged gang connections. He ran Death Row like a street operation. Intimidation, physical confrontation, and loyalty enforced through fear became part of the label's reputation. Bad Boy Records, led by Sean Diddy Combs, represented East Coast ambition. Diddy was a businessman, a marketer, a visionary who understood how to turn artists into brands. Bad Boy's approach was slicker, more corporate, but no less ruthless in its pursuit of success. Tupac Shakur became the face of West Coast aggression. His talent was undeniable, poetic, angry, vulnerable, and revolutionary. But his life was chaotic. Legal troubles, public feuds, and violent incidents followed him everywhere. His signing with Death Row Records in 1995 aligned him directly with Suge Knight's operation. The notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, became the face of East Coast excellence. His smooth flow, clever wordplay, and larger-than-life personality made him a superstar. His loyalty to Bad Boy Records and Diddy placed him squarely opposite Tupac. Tupac and Biggie had been friends once. Photos exist of them together, smiling, relaxed. But friendship crumbled under pressure, miscommunication, and outside influence. The breaking point came in November 1994. Tupac was robbed and shot 5 times in the lobby of Quad Recording Studios in New York. He survived but became convinced that Biggie and Diddy had advanced knowledge of the attack, or worse, were involved. Whether that belief was true or not, it didn't matter. Tupac's perception became his reality. The friendship ended. The rivalry turned vicious. Tupac released Hit 'Em Up in 1996, one of the most brutal diss tracks in hip-hop history. He attacked Biggie, Diddy, and everyone associated with Bad Boy Records. The lyrics were personal, cruel, and designed to provoke. Biggie responded with subtlety in his music, but the damage was done. The beef consumed both artists. Their labels encouraged it. Fans took sides. The media amplified every insult, every threat, every rumor. Music became warfare. Ego became an identity. Loyalty became life or death. Behind the scenes, real violence escalated. Associates of both camps were attacked. Shootings occurred at industry events. People lost their lives, not famous rappers yet, but people connected to the labels, caught in the crossfire of a conflict they didn't start. Gang affiliations complicated everything. Death Row had ties to the Bloods in Los Angeles. Bad Boy allegedly had connections to the Crips. The East Coast versus West Coast rivalry merged with genuine gang warfare. Street conflicts and music industry disputes became inseparable. By September 1996, the situation was explosive. Tupac was at his peak commercially, but increasingly reckless personally. Biggie was preparing his second album, trying to distance himself from the violence while remaining loyal to his camp. Diddy was building an empire, but facing accusations of fueling the conflict for profit. Suge Knight was fighting legal battles while running death row with an iron fist. Everyone involved knew the tension couldn't last. Something had to break. Someone had to lose. The question was who and how badly. The MGM grand confrontation with Orlando Anderson on September 7 happened within this context. It wasn't random violence, it was the inevitable result of months, maybe years, of escalating hatred. Tupac attacked Anderson because of alleged gang ties and the stolen medallion, but the attack also represented West Coast versus Crips, death row versus the streets, pride versus survival. What happened later that night at the intersection of Flamingo and Koval wasn't just a shooting, it was the culmination of old rivalries, new grudges, money, power, and the terrifying moment when music industry beef turns into real-world issues. The footage shows the violence at the MGM Grand. It shows the aftermath of the shooting, but it doesn't show the years of tension that made that night inevitable. It doesn't show the financial stakes. It doesn't show who benefited when Tupac's life ended. Those questions require looking beyond cameras. They require asking why certain names have always hovered around this case. Never quite proven guilty, never quite cleared, always present in the theories and whispers. The allegations that never went away. This section must be approached carefully. No one has been charged. No one has been convicted. The following is not accusation. It is documentation of public claims, allegations, and speculation that have circulated for nearly 3 decades. Sean Diddy Combs' name appears repeatedly in discussions about Tupac's demise, not in official police reports charging him with a crime, not in court documents convicting him of involvement, but in interviews, documentaries, books, and statements from people who claim to know what really happened. Why? The reasons are complex, circumstantial, and ultimately unproven, but they persist. In 2008, a Los Angeles Times article reported that Detective Greg Kading, who worked on a task force investigating both Tupac's and Biggie's demise, had obtained statements from informants. According to Kading's account, later detailed in his book, a gang member claimed that Diddy offered money for Tupac's demise. The alleged source was Dwayne Keith Keffy D. Davis, Orlando Anderson's uncle, and a member of the Southside Compton Crips. Keffy D. reportedly told investigators that Diddy approached him with an offer, $1 million to unalive Tupac and Suge Knight. Keffy D's statements were never tested in court regarding Diddy. No charges were filed against Diddy based on these claims. Diddy has consistently denied any involvement in Tupac's death. In 2023, Keff D was arrested and charged with connection with Tupac's death, but Diddy was not charged. The arrest came nearly 3 decades after the shooting, based partly on Keffy D's own public admissions and interviews and his memoir. Even with Keffy D facing charges, prosecutors did not implicate Diddy. Still, the allegation hangs in the air. Keffy D has repeated his claims in multiple interviews over the years. He has described the night of the shooting in detail. He has named people involved, and he has consistently mentioned Diddy as the person who allegedly wanted Tupac dead. Why would Diddy want Tupac unalived if the allegation is true? The theories fall into several categories. First, financial motive. Tupac's success with Death Row Records directly competed with Bad Boy Records. Tupac's diss tracks attacked Diddy personally and professionally. His album sales rivaled Biggie's. Eliminating Tupac would remove a powerful rival and potentially boost Bad Boy's market dominance. But this theory has problems. Tupac's death didn't destroy Death Row Records immediately. It didn't automatically benefit Bad Boy. If anything, Tupac's demise created a martyr, increased his album sales posthumously, and kept Death Row relevant for years. Second, personal revenge. Tupac's attacks weren't just professional, they were deeply personal. He accused Diddy of involvement in the 1994 Quad Studios shooting. He insulted Diddy publicly and aggressively. He challenged Diddy's credibility, manhood, and reputation. Could Diddy have wanted revenge badly enough to order a hit? The allegation suggests he did. But again, no evidence beyond claims from informants has ever been presented publicly that proves this. Third, gang connections. Diddy allegedly had relationships with Crips gang members in Los Angeles. If true, he would have had access to people willing to commit violence for money. The theory suggests Diddy used these connections to arrange the hit after the MGM Grand Confrontation gave a perfect excuse, a gang retaliation rather than a calculated assassination. But this remains speculation. Having connections doesn't prove involvement. Many people in the music industry in the 90s had relationships with gang members. It was part of the environment, the culture, the reality of where many artists came from. Former associates of Bad Boy Records have made statements over the years, hinting at Diddy's possible involvement. Some have walked back their claims. Some have remained consistent. None have provided evidence that led to charges. Documentaries have explored the allegations. Media coverage has kept Diddy's name circulating in connection with the case. Yet despite decades of scrutiny, no prosecutor has filed charges. No grand jury has indicted him. No witness has testified against him in court regarding Tupac's death. Does that mean he's innocent? Not necessarily. It means the evidence, whatever exists, has not been sufficient to bring criminal charges. Does that mean the allegations are false? Not necessarily. It means they remain unproven. This is the uncomfortable space where Tupac's demise lives. Allegations without resolution, claims without convictions, suspicions without evidence strong enough to act on. Diddy's name keeps surfacing not because of confirmed guilt, but because of persistent questions. Why hasn't this been resolved clearly? Why do informants keep pointing in his direction? Why does the theory refuse to vanish? Those questions lead to the next section, the deeper examination of why Diddy's name won't go away, what industry dynamics might explain the allegations, and what it means when someone can be publicly accused for decades without facing justice or exoneration. Why Diddy's name keeps resurfacing. If Sean Diddy Combs had nothing to do with Tupac Shakur's death, why does his name keep appearing in the conversation? If the allegations are baseless, why haven't they been definitively disproven? And if there's truth to them, why hasn't he been charged? These questions don't have simple answers, but examining the power dynamics of the 90s hip-hop industry offers some insight. Diddy was not just a record executive, he was a brand builder, a cultural architect, someone who understood that controlling the narrative meant controlling the money. Bad Boy Records wasn't just about music, it was about image, influence, and market dominance. In that world, rivals weren't just competition. They were threats to be neutralized, not necessarily through violence, but through any means necessary to win. Tupac represented the biggest threat Diddy faced. Tupac was talented, charismatic, commercially successful, and aggressively hostile toward everything Diddy represented. The allegation that Diddy might have wanted Tupac dead doesn't require him to be the one behind it. It only requires him to be ruthlessly pragmatic, someone willing to remove an obstacle if the cost was acceptable and the risk was manageable. But wanting someone gone and actually ordering their demise are very different things. The leap from motive to action requires evidence, and that's where the case stalls. Kefe D's claims provide the most direct allegation. He has stated publicly, in interviews, in his memoir, in police statements, that Diddy offered him $1 million to unalive Tupac and Suge Knight. He claims the hit was discussed, planned, and executed by members of the Southside Compton Crips, including his nephew, Orlando Anderson. If true, this would be a conspiracy to commit crime. It would make Diddy legally responsible, even if he never pulled the trigger. But Kefe D's credibility has been questioned. He has changed details of his story over time. He wrote a book and gave paid interviews, raising questions about financial motives for making dramatic claims. His statements were given years after the fact, sometimes decades later, when memories fade and details blur. Moreover, Kefe D himself is not a neutral witness. He was allegedly involved in the shooting. He has admitted being in the white Cadillac that night. His incentive to shift blame or implicate others to reduce his own culpability is obvious. Still, law enforcement took his claims seriously enough to investigate. Greg Kading's task force pursued the theory. The information was documented. Yet no charges against Diddy resulted. Kefe D's claims alone may not meet the legal standard for prosecution. Without additional witnesses, physical evidence, or documentation proving money changed hands, prosecutors might view the case as too weak. Another reason is the pattern of violence. Tupac was unalived in September 1996. 6 months later, The notorious B.I.G. was unalived in Los Angeles under similarly mysterious circumstances. Biggie's demise is also officially unsolved, though theories abound that it was retaliation for Tupac's death. Two of the biggest stars in hip-hop, both dead within months, both demise unsolved. The situation suggests connection. And if the deaths are connected, then the same names, the same rivalries, the same power players must be examined. Diddy's name surfaces in Biggie's death theories too, not as a suspect, but as someone who might know more than he's said. Biggie was his artist, his friend, his moneymaker. Diddy was with Biggie the night he was unalived, yet the case remains cold. The idea that Diddy could be connected to both demise, even indirectly, seems impossible. But in the world of 90s hip-hop, where business, gangs, and violence intersected constantly, impossible doesn't mean it didn't happen.